All right, so very lucky to be here with Dr. Alok Patel, national ABC News physician, Healthy Planet Project volunteer extraordinaire. I am honored to ask a lot of questions about how the environment, how climate change is affecting our health.
This is a needed conversation that we unfortunately have to have, and I have so much respect for you for using your platform to spread this information to the people.
And it's important to me, and let's find out what we can do to make a change. So let me start there. Just generally, how does environmental pollution impact public health? And what are some common health issues associated with poor environmental conditions?
That question just gave me anxiety because right now, according to the World Health Organization, about 3.6 billion people worldwide live in areas that are susceptible to climate change. And this is kind of a daunting stat. I hate to start out with this kind of morbid note, but we are estimating that if nothing gets fixed from the year 2030 to 2050, we're gonna have an additional 250,000 deaths per year related to climate.
Whoa.
And this comes in a lot of different reasons, shapes, and forms. So people out there might think, oh man, climate change, this means that the world gets hotter. So heat-related illness, that's heat-related stress, exhaustion, heat-related deaths. That is only one cause. For example, when we have things like natural disasters, wild storms, that's also going to increase the risk of certain mental illnesses, anxiety, PTSD, depression, not only for people who are living it, but also first responders as well. That often doesn't get the amplification it deserves in the media. And who's at more risk here are people who are living in those zones, people who may be stricken from poverty, who may not have the resources to escape these areas. You're also thinking about young children, the elderly, people with underlying medical conditions who are really hit from natural disasters. So it goes on, and I have like 5 more.
That is massive, and honestly, it's kind of compounding, right? I guess that leads me to the question of, some of the things that we're doing with Healthy Planet Project is we're trying to pick up trash along the beaches. We're trying to plant trees, plant plants. So what are some of the things that we can do to start kind of reversing climate change and so that we don't actually get to this outcome that we're on the path towards so far?
I think exactly what you, Healthy Planet Project, are doing is what we all need to do, is think about what we can do on the individual level. And I think it helps for people to understand what the downstream negative impact is. So someone might say hey, planet's getting hotter, there's nothing I can do about it. That's not true. You can do things like paying attention to how much energy you use in your house, using public transportation, doing what you can to cut down your carbon emissions, and give people the motivation by telling them, hey, when the planet gets hotter, the air is hotter, but also what happens when we get warmer? There's more allergens in the air. We have a longer and more potent allergy season. Allergy sufferer, I know that Lexi is as well, and so are you.
I am huge.
So your allergy season is gonna get longer as the planet gets hotter. Plants have more time to throw out allergens. CO2 in the atmosphere actually makes plants even produce higher amounts of allergens as well. And also, warmer temperatures mean that ground level pollution like ozone, that gets trapped around the cities. It's a lot of breathing problems for people. Whoa. So when people hear this, they then are like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm gonna take public transportation. I'm gonna plant more plants to help clean up the air, and also make sure you're picking up after yourself. And the one big phrase I really like is to reduce, reuse, recycle, repair. Pay attention to your own personal waste. We waste a lot of products, a lot of plastics, a lot of food. Cut down on all of that, and eat more veggies as well. That's great for the planet.
Wow, really? So eating veggies is great for the planet?
Eating veggies actually is, because we start to pay attention to the impact that livestock can actually have and the farming industry can actually have. There's so many different layers here.
Wow.
And because you just asked me, hey, Dr. Patel, how does climate change affect our food? It does that as well, because as you have climate change and you have massive droughts, that's affecting our ability to grow food for a growing population. So do storms, so does floods. When you start mixing the water supply, you then taint water and people start getting infections from that as well.
I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I'm really just eating all of this up and learning kind of how it all interconnects, right? So I think the thing for me, I'm like, whoa, okay, so as I do these things, I'm reversing all this. I'm hearing all of the bad things that are happening, but just taking care of my household, reducing carbon emissions, planting trees, having more plants even around your house, kind of cleans your air. But I guess that is something that I thought was really amazing when I was doing some research on how trees affect cities, how they affect neighborhoods, how they affect stress and anxiety levels. They reduce violence, which there's so many invisible factors to what trees do. So can you expand on just what planting trees, and also not only planting them in local and native plants, flowers and whatever the case may be, how do they help reduce climate change and kind of heal our cities?
Well, think about the way we need oxygen. Plants need CO2. So we get more plants around, we have this nice symbiotic, this mutual relationship of helping to clean up the air. It's as simple as that. And I love the fact that you brought up the individual responsibility to plant more plants. That's something that anyone can do all the time to not only help with our environment, you're helping with the ecosystem, you're basically helping the entire chain for the planet. And as I mentioned, you're keeping that air clean. Even in your house, getting more plants in here. I can feel it. This little guy right here is coming through.
They do. They change the room. So I definitely recommend, working to change your space a little bit. And I really think like because everyone's like, well, what can I do? It feels too much. Like you don't realize the impact of like one person, just you having more plants, you going out and planting a tree. How many people will come up to you and like be like, how do I get involved? So like it really,
For sure.
the butterfly effect is real here. And it all starts with us. Change your house, you change the neighborhood, you change the city, yada, 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 on and on until we all have a big change. So Dr. Patel, lastly, I think one thing that's really I've learned from just a couple of our events, and when we're picking up trash, there's so many cigarette butts and toxins.
Yes.
And obviously, it's a day in and day out basis, but like picking up a little bit of trash here and there, like say you're walking your dog, even just like going out into nature as a human, like how much does that impact the health, and how do we slow down a lot of these toxins that are getting into our water systems?
I think the individual responsibility is extremely important, making sure that we're paying attention to picking up our trash. You're obviously paying attention to the dangers of getting plastics into our water supply. People need to understand downstream effects of all this, but also short term. If I'm like, hey, if I'm gonna throw trash in our city, and then people start to understand how they can then permeate into the water and the food and directly affect your health, I think it moves people. I think people hear about microplastics in our oceans. They then are like, wait, is that potentially going to affect our health or the next generation or the generation after that? Absolutely. I think having that global perspective is important, but also this is a good reason for people to pay attention to what's happening with voting, and to be an activist and look to see what's the broader change that we can all work together behind.
Because with regards to that, with like paying attention to voting, and really like policy and like holding companies accountable for the pollutions that they're emitting and the plastics that they're emitting and that we're creating. Also, even just what you decide to buy, purchasing from companies that are doing certain things sustainably. Can you talk a little bit more on what you should look for if you are interested? And because we change policy, you can't get away with a lot of the pollutions and stuff. But if we allow it through policy, then we're kind of toxifying ourselves and our cities. So what are some of the policies and systemic changes that we can make or look for?
I love it. This is going to turn into a 4-hour talk, but I think anywhere people live in any place in the world, look to see what your local leaders are doing about climate change, about the environment, and about how all this intertwines for public health. I think it's extremely important. Look to see if they're even paying attention to it. And if not, bring that up at the next rally, at the next public forum, and you get a chance to submit that question. If someone says, I want to be a leader of this community organization, I want to run for president, whatever it may be, ask them these questions, because it absolutely matters. When CEOs talk about their companies, look to see what their policies are. Do they have sustainable materials through their buildings? Are they paying attention to electricity? Are they using solar power? These all really matter. And you mentioned something about plastics. I think it's absolutely great for people to look to see what you're buying. Look to see, is that a environmentally friendly bottle? People ask me all the time when it comes to baby products, should I be buying glass or steel? And I love the fact that parents are asking this question, because you don't want to be buying cheap plastics that are going to then wind up in the ocean or our water supply.
Absolutely. That's incredible. And I'm seeing kind of the change here in San Francisco. Even just the opportunity to buy plastics, like you're seeing so much more aluminum and glass bottles, because and you're seeing a lot of kids that are doing a really good job. There's so many of those reusable water bottles. These things make such a big difference, and it's just a small little life change that you'll get in the habit of. So I think that is one thing that goes a long way.
Those cups are trendy too.
Yeah, and you can get your cool stickers. You can get your cool stickers, but I definitely I always notice them, and it's fun to watch people's style and creativity with the water bottles. I guess lastly, just expand a little bit on. Let's just talk individual health versus collective health, and how important it is for you on a daily basis, mentally, physically, to get out into nature and to get into the oceans, to get into the forests. What's the science kind of behind that?
There is so much science that actually backs our need to go outside, to get sunlight, to get fresh air. This not only helps with our movement, it helps with our circadian rhythm, kind of keeping track of what's light versus dark, but also it's really important, according to every major medical body, especially the American Heart Association, that we need to move. We need to get moderate to vigorous aerobic activity as much as we can. It's extremely important, and a fun way to do that is to get out and go hiking, go surfing, like we did that one time. You know
Yes,
what I mean?
indeed.
To go running, to do anything outdoors, and that's another downstream effect. If we have extreme weather patterns, if we have storms, if we have droughts, this affects our ability to go outside. And that's awful. And then you think about the people who have no choice but to be outside. Either they're houseless or they have to work in an environment. And so you think about how if we don't pay attention to our planet, we lose this vital resource that's called nature. And one thing I'll add about the individual level is, as we're talking about all this, always make sure that we're keeping people who are vulnerable in our minds. That's babies, that's pregnant individuals, that's the elderly, people with underlying medical conditions, people in certain socioeconomic situations who may be hit harder from climate change than we might. We're sitting with a roof, we have resources. If there's a big storm outside, it doesn't affect us as much as others. If there's a heat wave, it is going to hit those individuals harder than us.
Wow.
It's about all of us together, not just one person.
No, it is a massive collective effort that we have to do and we have to move towards. It really is just absolutely mind-boggling to kind of take all this in. The next thing for me was just like you mentioned, how climate change is creating more storms and more of these kind of tragedies and nature catastrophes. What are the actions, and maybe we've already hit on them, and how do they slow down some of these catastrophes and so that they're not happening as often?
There is science to suggest that a warmer planet, warmer ocean temperatures, air temperatures, for example, can lead to conditions that are going to cause more hurricanes and more storms. And meteorologists have shown us the evidence for this.
Okay.
There's also evidence to show that as we have a warmer planet, that we're going to create conditions like droughts and sandstorms. And when we have rising sea levels, all this interplays with each other. And natural disasters obviously can be destructive on their own, but also that can affect our water supply as well. And when you get that, you really start to mess with our ability to have safe drinking water. And in certain parts of the country, this is a hotbed for disease, including infectious diarrhea. Two words that we don't want to talk about that we unfortunately hit all the time when there is climate-related floods and storms.
Dang.
Speaking of infection, do you know who is actually rooting for climate change? Who actually wants the planet to get hotter and more dangerous and more humid?
Who?
Insects.
Whoa.
So here's another reason we should pay attention, because when we're talking fleas, mosquitoes, these bugs that spread diseases like Zika, malaria, dengue, West Nile virus, hantavirus, for example, they would love for the planet to be hotter and more humid so they can expand their territory. That's another reason why we have to pay attention, is infectious disease would run rampant if more of the planet was a friendly place for all these critters.
Wow. So the choice is ours. We can still live a very, comfortable life.
Absolutely.
And do all of this.
Absolutely.
It just takes a little bit of mental effort to get in the habit of doing small things and making small adjustments. And I think that really it's in our hands and it's our choice. So
I think that's empowering. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, let's do our part. And thank you so much for your time, Dr. Alok. It was absolutely insightful.
Anytime.
And you come out and see us at Healthy Planet Project, and we're looking forward to more surfing,
I will.
More cleaning,
I
more
will.
dancing, more laughing, more sun rays, and more impact on this earth.
Because it affects all of us now and basically till the end of time.
Yeah. So
Take care of this planet we live on, please.
we love you. We love our planet. Let's do this.